In Ed's cabin, the sky was already dark at this time with the crescent moon clearly visible above. Ed and Lortell were sitting leisurely in front of the cabin at this time. Lortell then said, most of the materials he requested had been collected, but it was difficult to find legendary grade items. Those items were difficult to obtain during the winter. Ed did not mind that. After all, he knew that she was busy. So he thanked her for helping him. Lortell asked him not to think too much about it. She regarded this as a side task only. Hearing that, Ed then asked her, "Why did you bother to come here to report it to me, when you could have rested? You traveled quite a distance to get here." Lortell asked him not to worry. She said, she just came here to rest. The crescent moon, the moon that was originally circular now faded, leaving little trace. Time seemed to pass so quickly, because life was so busy. Winter came. Hibernation also enveloped everyone together with the same silence, but everyone received it with a different attitude. For Ed, winter is a test to protect oneself from the bitter cold. It is also a time for him to develop into a better self. Although it is a busy time to prepare, for those who have gone through such a thing, winter awakens their sense of solitude, as if walking on a lonely road. Winter seems to have such a magical power attached to it. With a feeling of doubt filling her heart, Lortell then called him. She asked, "Why is Lucy sleeping on your lap?" Hearing that, Ed replied, "Because it's winter." Lortell really couldn't understand his answer. She then didn't know what else to say. She then could only sigh helplessly. Lortell said, honestly, if she just wanted to discuss about magic engineering supply, she wouldn't have come all the way here. Hearing that, Ed then asked, "Is there any other reason?" Lortell smiled. Hearing that, while taking out some kind of book, she told him not to pretend not to know. Looking at the book, Ed knew what she meant. He asked, "Did you finally make an offer?" Lortell replied, "Of course, the book is the Sage's Scroll." She can ask anything from Ed with it, while also taking out the letter that Ed had sent her that time. Lortell then smiled sweetly. She said, "This is an interesting story, right?" He asked her to bid for the Sage's Scroll. In return he will do anything for her. As a merchant, it's only right for her to get back the money she has spent. Ed could only surrender at this time. He then asked, "What kind of help do you want?" Lortell then whispered to him. She said that she would not make such a big request that it would burden him. Lortell only asked him to support her. Ed was quite surprised by her request. He then remembered, it was Act 3. The conflict between Princess Phinia and Lortell was about to begin. Lortell, sensing this, began to formulate her plan. The kind Princess Phinia Elias Kloll. She was destined to be Lortell's lifelong rival. According to the original scenario, she would become student council president, rule the academy, and build her influence, and with her power, she will become a key figure in Act 4, as the revealer of the dark secrets of the Roth-Taylor family. While Ed was deep in thought, Lortell then continued, "For everyone who lives in this academy, there will come a time for them to choose one side, either side A or side B. When the time comes," Lortell asked him to please support her. That's all she asked. Hearing that, Ed thought, Phinia and Lortell, who will be the winner in their feud? It all depends on who will ally with Taylor. In the end, it's not him who decides. Ed then said to her, even if he supports her, it doesn't seem to be very helpful. Lortell also felt the same way. Although his reputation improved, his support did not produce significant results. After all, he is just an ordinary student. Hearing that, somehow it feels strange after hearing it from her. While smiling widely, Lortell continued, "But so what? This is not about the politics of gain and loss. It's just that it's important for her to know whether he supports her or not." Hearing that, Ed then accepted her request. After all, it is not too difficult, but he was then shocked when he saw Lortell burn the letter that was proof of their agreement. Lortell revealed her plan with a seductive smile. She was the girl with 1,000 faces, but, while smiling sweetly at him, Lortell said that she was happy. Ed wondered if she could continue to express like that, since it was a holiday. Of course there would be no classes and assignments for the scholarship students, although he thought of sleeping until noon and relaxing after a long time for the first time. In the end he woke up early because it had become a habit. Seeing Lucy, who was still half awake, Ed asked, "Can you light a fire for me?" Without saying a word, Lucy then lit the bonfire using her magic. Ed had a long chat with Lortell last night, but something was stuck in his mind. Lortell at that time asked him, "You have a younger sister, right? I think she's been preparing something. It's hard to know if they see you as a family enemy, or it's just a mild rivalry between siblings." To be honest, she felt it was a bit funny. so she introduced her to some people. And she said she'd go meet them all today. She might come to see him tomorrow morning and scold him. Hearing the sound of footsteps of some people heading to his cabin, Ed then thought, so, she finally came, the younger sibling of the body he possessed. Who knows what relationship they have? It's a mystery. No matter how hard I think about it, I don't know anything. Ed realized. There was nothing he could do. Looking at the brother he hadn't seen for a long time, Tanya then greeted him, with a little stammer. She said that she brought a gift for him because they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Looking at Tanya, who was sweating profusely and seemed unwilling to look him in the eye, Ed wondered, was she nervous? Was she embarrassed? He felt like she was scared, but at least he didn't see any resentment. But then he finally realized, as long as Ed was in the family mansion, he was living a decent life. He could only lament for jumping to conclusions too quickly. He sarcastically thought, good job, Ed Rothtaylor. Seeing Ed, who suddenly patted his head in frustration, it reminded Tanya of the nightmares she repeatedly had in the past. Ed at that time really did something arbitrary. He threw the food served by the maid and scolded her. How dare you serve food like this to the future head of the Rothtaylor family? Looking at Tanya, who seemed not to see the events in front of her, Ed with a sardonic smile said, your ability to turn a blind eye to the events in front of you is really impressive. You really mastered the art of social tact and reading the situation. Ed's nature at that time was completely inversely proportional to the current Ed. He behaved so arrogantly and haughtily as if no one could oppose him in this world. Ed then stepped on the head of the maid who served him the food. The maid could only forcefully accept it while enduring the pain. Tanya's hands trembled as she watched that very tragic scene. She could not stand it anymore. She then shouted, asking him to please stop it. The environment was silent when Tanya shouted like that at him. But she then regretted her actions. Ed asked her, why did you do that? Did you feel pity or sympathy for these tools? With a sadistic smile, Ed said, it seems that you have not become a true noble yet. But Ed's violent nature at that time was not at all seen in the current Ed. While smiling happily, Ed then thanked her for the gift. He said he would use it well. He would wear it starting next semester. As she knew, he was currently not recognized by the family. He was no longer her brother, but she still treated him like this. He was grateful. Tanya could only be stunned to hear that. Ed asked her not to just stand there. Sit by the fireplace and wait for a while. As Ed entered the cabin, he muttered that there were not many tea leaves left, so he decided to just finish it. Seeing Lucy lying nearby, Tanya then asked, who is that child? Ed asked her not to care about her. He also told Lucy not to stay still, and give them some space. While carrying 2 cups of hot tea in his hand, Ed then asked her, I heard that you have toured the academy and met some people. Tanya confirmed it. She also said that she heard a lot of things about him. Ed was quite surprised to hear that. He said that he didn't have many acquaintances, so he felt that it might be Zix or Janica. They immediately became tense when they heard Janica's name. Ed then asked, did she meet her? She's a nice person, right? Of all the people he knew, she was the kindest in attitude and heart. Tanya could only agree to that. She said that she was so kind, so incredibly kind. She was very kind. Tanya emphasized that repeatedly to make Ed believe her words. Tanya continued, plus, she was very strong, that high fire spirit in the form of a fire lizard. She summoned it and threw people around like toys. Not only did she insist she wouldn't leave her alone if she didn't answer correctly, but she was also kind and graceful. She even encouraged her to do her best in the academy. Ed then felt anxious hearing Janica summon the high spirit, feeling that she had blurted out. Tanya immediately said that she didn't do it. She really didn't. It was probably just her imagination. She had just heard a rumor that the high spirit looked like that, so she just made up a story like that. Ed could only sigh at that. He had expected it. There was indeed something strange. The Tanya he remembered was not a shy person. After all, everyone who had met Ed Rothtaylor must have a bad impression on him. Ed then called her. Tanya nervously answered his call. Ed said, at present, he is living on his own, so he asked her not to look at him too badly. He is just a nobleman who was excommunicated for his penance. He realized that he had acted arbitrarily while still living in the mansion. He regretted it very much. There were many things he could not fix, but he asked her to forgive him. Ed also said, he heard she wanted to be student council president. He said he would support her. Maybe he wouldn't be too helpful, but he knew she always worked hard. So he told her to cheer up, but Ed knew, even if he said such things, Tanya would not be able to become student council president. Because Tanya was just a villain used to increase Fenia's popularity, but still, since she was the first blood relative he met, no matter what, he felt attached to her, but, looking at her expression, he didn't know which direction their relationship would go. Tanya looked very nervous at the moment, sweat was pouring down her face, her eyes looked blank as if she was facing something terrible. After Tanya finally returned to her dormitory, she then sighed tiredly. She was almost caught off guard for a moment. She knew that bastard's true nature, but, still, she was almost burned alive while vilifying that person in front of her. There was one thing she realized at that time: sincere anger. Janica seemed to really believe and follow that person wholeheartedly. However, she felt that it was strange. Sylvania was filled with elites. Even its best student, Lucy Merrill, was a genius mage who appeared once in a lifetime. In a place filled with such people, no matter how well Ed Roth-Taylor acted, his true nature would have been revealed by now. But she was then surprised when she saw someone who was in Ed's cabin earlier appeared there. That person was of course Lucy. Their rooms turned out to be next to each other. She lamented, even in the best dormitory, Awfulest Hall, there were people who were imperfect, clumsy, and not graceful. She then realized, there was no perfect place in this world. She also felt that Ed was just lucky. Seeing her, Lucy then asked, "Are you her sister?" While standing on tiptoe, Lucy then put her hand on her shoulder. She said, if she was in trouble, she could come to her. After saying that, Lucy then went back into her room. Tanya didn't know what to say seeing that. But, she was then stunned. Even in the best dormitory, Awfulest Hall, only the best students were entitled to use the golden nameplate. After reading the name on the nameplate, she was then shocked. She did not expect that the person she looked bad at turned out to be the genius mage who appeared once in a lifetime, Lucy Merrill.